The mid-range smartphone market is often defined by what you find in the sub $200 or £160 price range. Nokia have been doing very well in this space recently, particularly in 2020 with the Nokia 5.3, which we reviewed and did some other videos on here on Tech Travel Geeks. This is the comparison between the recently released Nokia 5.4 and the 2020 Nokia 5.3. If you don't already, please do subscribe to the Tech Travel Geeks here on YouTube. Right then, so we recently unboxed and set up our Nokia 5.4 and we've started the process of doing our Tech Travel Geeks long-term review of the device. So far, I'm pleasantly surprised because, as is the case in many smartphone reviews, a smartphone is more than the sheer spec sheet, the numbers that get shown on paper. And whilst the Nokia 5.4 on paper isn't much more than the Nokia 5.3, the actual experience so far has been much better. So let's go through a direct spec-by-spec comparison, and then I'll give you a bit more insight on where I am with my review and what to expect in the coming weeks from the Tech Travel Geeks in terms of more videos about the Nokia 5.4. Right then, so first things first, the body of the two devices is slightly different. The Nokia 5.4 is slightly shorter and in actual use feels slightly more usable, whereas the Nokia 5.3 is slightly longer. The bodies are different constructions. They're both, in this case, plastic frames with plastic backs, but where the Nokia 5.3 goes for a plain black matte finish or matte black finish, the Nokia 5.4 has a significantly different, I would say almost glass-stick back, which gives you a bit of texture underneath that, but is completely smooth and a fingerprint magnet. But in terms of absolute looks, how it looks when you hold it up to your ear, the Nokia 5.4 is definitely an upgrade on the Nokia 5.3. And overall, the build quality seems to be a little bit tighter and better put together on the Nokia 5.4. Now, the differences here are very slight, and that's mainly down to the screen on the devices. So, the Nokia 5.4 has an HD Plus screen. This is not a full high-definition screen. And that's pretty much the same as what we have on the Nokia 5.3. But the devil's in the detail. So the Nokia 5.3 has a longer screen. It's a longer aspect ratio, which means it's 720 pixels wide, and in this case it's 1600 pixels high. Whereas the Nokia 5.4 is 720 pixels wide, and it is, importantly, 1560 pixels long. So it's 40 pixels shorter. Overall, in usability, there's very little difference. That 40 pixel difference in the height of the device doesn't make much of a difference there, as far as usability is concerned. But where it does make a difference is that it makes the industrial design of the smartphone shorter. So the Nokia 5.4, as we saw, is slightly shorter. Another thing to also bear in mind is that these are both LCD screens. So whereas I do enjoy using dark mode, there's little or no battery saving as a result of using that. And you can see here, it is a Google-like experience on that screen. But we'll go into the software a bit more in depth in a few minutes. But the important thing to remember is that the physical size of the device is most likely due to that different screen setup in terms of both resolution and size. And also another notable difference is that placement of the selfie camera. On the Nokia 5.3 we have a traditional teardrop notch, whereas the Nokia 5.4 has the newer design with a dot cutout at the top left-hand corner of the screen for the selfie camera. We'll focus on that selfie camera a bit more in depth later. Now on the back, both smartphones, both the Nokia 5.3 and the Nokia 5.4, have fingerprint scanners nicely placed ergonomically underneath a round camera module. Now, in terms of absolute design and aesthetics, I much prefer the Nokia 5.3 with how it's laid out on the back. The quad camera module that houses, in the case of the Nokia 5.3, a 13 megapixel camera, a 5 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera and a 2 megapixel depth camera. Those 4 cameras have a flash module, LED flash module in the middle of them. And that main 13 megapixel sensor can record 4K video at 30 frames per second. Whereas the Nokia 5.4 is a bit less refined in that sort of industrial design. So we see a quad camera module. The main sensor has bumped up. It's a 48 megapixel camera now, main sensor. It also has, just like the Nokia 5.3, a 5 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensor. Now, whereas the LED module on the 5.3 is in the middle of that round camera module, they've moved it off to the left here, so it's not integrated. But the nice touch on the Nokia 5.4 is that it also has that blue finish in the detailing of the camera module, so it does look pretty good in that context.
These came back from a search.
Whoa! So whilst I was picking up the phone, I touched the dedicated Google Assistant there. That was by accident. This is a feature that most Nokia phones have nowadays, and as you can see here, both the Nokia 5.4 and the Nokia 5.3 have dedicated Google Assistant buttons on the left-hand side of the screen. So I'll just switch the screen off to avoid tapping that again. In terms of other button placements, we have the usual setup. So on the right-hand side of the screen, we have a power button and a volume rocker, and it's exactly the same positioning on the Nokia 5.4, power button and volume rocker. The key difference here is that the Nokia 5.3 has an extra feature here. That power button is also an LED notification light. So it glows when you have a notification, and it's a good way to have a visual cue that there's notifications. The Nokia 5.4 doesn't have that. It was a fundamental product choice they had to make, and I'm sure most people won't miss that. Then again, if you are in a situation where you want to see if you have notifications when not hearing sound or feeling a vibration, maybe the Nokia 5.3 might be the one to go for, because it does have an LED notification light. Whereas I haven't found that on the Nokia 5.4. So in terms of design, at the top of the two devices, both of them have courage ports, that's 3.5mm audio jacks, and they're both in the same position there. The difference here is the positioning of the microphone holes. On the Nokia 5.4 it's closer to the headphone jack, whereas on the 5.3 it's on the other side of the device, on the top edge of the smartphone. Looking at the section below, very similar here as well. We have similarly positioned microphone holes at the top. There is a USB Type-C port on each smartphone for charging and data, and a single bottom firing speaker. So they're very similar in that space, but as I said, that little difference in length of smartphone, both in the screen and the body of the device, makes for a significantly different experience using the smartphone, in my personal opinion. Another thing to bear in mind is that the batteries on these two devices, underneath the matte black finish on the Nokia 5.3 and the blue, or in this case polar night coloured back of the device, is a 4000 milliamp hour battery, and it's the same on both devices, and they both come with 10-watt chargers. So not the biggest batteries on the market, and you'll get more from, for example, the Xiaomi Redmi 9, but pretty decent for devices in this price range. So, okay then, we've moved on from the main cameras and backs, let's unlock the devices with the fingerprint scanner, which I've done there, and have a look at the smartphone experience itself. So both smartphones are Android One smartphones. They have a similar experience in terms of user interface and menu systems. It's very, very simple. This is very close to essentially the Google experience of smartphones. It's very similar to what we have on, for example, the Google Pixel 4a and the Google Pixel 5. The difference being that there are some features that are not there, but overall the software experience is very, very similar there. Now, Nokia have been quite vocal about their shouting out about having the latest Android versions and the latest updates. I find this extremely inconsistent. So on the right here I have the Nokia 5.3, which more than 3 months after the launch of Android 11 is still on Android 10, and my security patch, now on the 9th of January 2021, is the 1st of November. So I should have had, by this point, another security patch, an update from Nokia. I haven't had that. Actually, I should have had two. I should have had the December update and the January one. That's not happened. And ironically, the Nokia 5.4, the newer smartphone, is still on Android 10, but it's on an even older Android security patch level. It's in October. The device was only announced, in this case, in December. So the fact that this is running on an October security patch is extremely worrying, because this is not only is this an Android 1 device, it's an Android device, and it's almost a whole quarter behind in terms of updates, because you have November, December, and January patches already out in the wild. The Nokia 5.4 isn't there yet, which is quite worrying. So one thing I would say, be aware that Nokia is very good at announcing devices and promising lots of security updates and updates, but in reality that doesn't happen. And I can say that as this is now the 14th Nokia device I've had since HMD Global took stewardship of the brand. Now, I've chosen to use dark mode on both the Nokia 5.3 and 5.4. In terms of other specifications, they both, in my case, have NFC, which is great. This means that you can use NFC to make mobile payments, contactless payments. You can use it for accessing public transit and other things. But please be aware that not all markets and all versions of these two devices have NFC. So these are both devices we purchased here in the UK for Tech Travel Geeks. They're both devices for the UK market purchased on Amazon UK. And in case you're interested, we'll pop the links to where you can purchase those in the description to this video. So in terms of connectivity, we've said NFC is there. They both have Bluetooth 4.2. That means that you will be able to use aptX on both devices. So if you have aptX earphones, there'll be slight improvements in latency and sound quality, but you won't be able to use, for example, some of the features of Bluetooth 5, such as adding multiple audio outputs or connecting to multiple devices at the same time. So that's one thing to bear in mind. In terms of other connectivity, you have the usual global positioning system, so GPS is available on both, as well as GLONASS and BDS. The difference is here very minor, and probably little or few services will use this, but the Nokia 5.4 declaredly has Galileo support, the European Union's satellite system. But there's very few advantages to that, especially when you have at least another 3 to back it up. Now, both these devices have FM radios. To use that FM radio, you will need to plug in headphones, wired headphones, to those 3.5mm audio jacks. So one thing to bear in mind. Both these devices, unlike, say, the Xiaomi Redmi 9 that we reviewed recently here on Tech Travel Geeks. There is no infrared blaster, so be aware of that. And in terms of Wi-Fi, they have the usual 802.11bg and N. Declaredly, according to the spec sheet, the Nokia 5.3 also has 802.11ac, but that's something that most users probably won't be affected by. Okay then, so we've talked about that. In terms of the top of the screen, earlier we mentioned those notches or dotches, notch and dotch. Notch for the Nokia 5.3, dotch for the Nokia 5.4. They house two significantly different selfie cameras. The Nokia 5.3, so the one on the right, has an 8 megapixel selfie camera, which can also record video in up to full high definition video at 30 frames per second. Whereas the Nokia 5.4 has a much higher resolution 16 megapixel camera, but it maxes out at video recording at 1080p. So realistically, you should be able to use both smartphones in good lighting conditions to do vlogging, but the quality of the Nokia 5.4 video should be slightly better and perform slightly better in lower lighting conditions. Right then, so I think we've touched on most key features and settings. One thing a lot of people reach out to us on the Tech Travel Geeks YouTube channel about is, what is the user experience like out of the box? Why don't I have a back button anymore? And that's because with the Nokia 5.3 and 5.4, Google and Nokia are pushing users towards using a new gesture-based system. If you want to, you can change that. And what we're going to do is soon do another video indicating how to change from gesture navigation to having the 3 buttons at the bottom for back, multitasking and home. Let us know in the comments if you'd like to see that for the Nokia 5.3, but we'll definitely be doing that for the Nokia 5.4. And who knows, maybe we'll also do it for the Nokia 3.4 whilst we're at it. So that's a quick overview of all the key features and settings. Let us know if you'd like to see a camera comparison between the Nokia 5.3 and 5.4. I'm sure our Chief Aperture Officer, Lukasz, would be interested in editing one of those together. And be patient, we don't rush into reviews here at Tech Travel Geeks, but the Nokia 5.4 review is in process now. One of my main SIM cards is in the device, and over the coming weeks I'll be forming some opinions on that. We might also compare the Nokia 5.4 to the Nokia 3.4, just to give you a bit more context about what the differences and similarities are. But overall, I have to say, though on paper the specifications of the two smartphones are very, very similar, they're run by the same Snapdragon 665 or 662 chipset, whereas there's a bit of branding there. They're practically identical on paper. The experience for me is slightly better in the Nokia 5.4. So, as I said at the beginning, the overall experience and the value a smartphone delivers is more than the sum of its specifications. So I think we'll wrap up this quick comparison between the Nokia 5.3 and the Nokia 5.4. Thank you for watching if you made it all the way to this point in time in the video. Not a lot of people do, according to what we see from YouTube analytics. And if you don't already, please do subscribe to the Tech Travel Geeks here on YouTube. If you're subscribed and you have that bell notification tapped, you'll be notified of when we release new videos, whether they're related to these two smartphones, the Nokia 5.3 and the Nokia 5.4, or whether there are any other video about technology or gadgets or accessories that make the travel experience better. So, thank you for watching, and for now, goodbye from us.